Thank you.
And we proceed with the last presentation, which is going to turn now the sphere and emphasis into Parkinson's disease and the newly kicked off project last month called iPrognosis and coordinated by Professor Leontios Hadjileontiadis. He will try to link the design and the plan of the whole work and concept behind iPrognosis with ideas fused from this workshop and the possibility of using living lab concepts.
Thank you, Panos. It seems a very busy month and years for your lab, the next 2 ones. I hope to help also because iPrognosis is inside. So actually I will discuss about iPrognosis, which is a project that is funded by the European Union. And I will try to show the relationship with the living labs. And as Panos said, we will tackle the problem of the Parkinson's disease. And Parkinson's disease has different symptoms that when we hear the word Parkinson, we usually connect with tremor. So there are a lot of other difficulties that appear in the everyday life of these people. And all the goes to sleep also, to voice change, to the gait, to the balance, even depression, emotional aspect. And the problem has a wide range, let's say, coverage. We have about 6.3 million patients and more 20 in danger. And unfortunately, there is no biomarker or any imaging technique that can show us that you have Parkinson if you go to test yourself. So there is a real need in order to find some tools to predict if you are going to have a Parkinson, to express the Parkinson's disease the next years. A lot of focus in the latest years have been placed in the non-motor symptoms. So there are, as I say here in this paper in the Nature, that there are mysteries of the non-motor, let's say, symptoms of Parkinson. So they try to find a kind of hierarchy in these non-motor symptoms in order to tackle and find them earlier from the doctor's perspective. And if we see the timeline, we see that there are about 20 years with non-motor symptoms. So we have to find a way to shrink this duration of the years in order to have the zero time here. So we have all these symptoms before, minus 20 years. So the problem is quite difficult in order to identify prognostic indexes that give us information about this situation before actually we have the motor symptoms. The doctors collect all the information they can try to find in order to see if there's any correlation with these aspects. And also they have a series of tests that include motor and non-motor tests combined. They go also to quality of life and go to the sleep. And even the smelling change also is one indicator. In our project, actually, we're going towards the direction of the living lab approach. And I searched about the, let's say, definition about the living labs. And I found a paper by the Felsted that trying also to define the living labs after reviewing about 25 papers about living labs. But I think it's actually I agree with the concept of environment for innovation and development. And also what is important is that use realistic settings and realistic conduct in order to create, let's say, to grasp the most real thing of the problem, the real nature of the problem. So as we see, the living lab creates a kind of innovation driven by the citizens, and also it gives them opportunity to have access in this innovation, and also to donate data. In our case, we want to have this aspect of donation of the data because we think that also we can include people that are not so elderly or older elders, as we say, but younger, and actually they will become elderly eventually. So At the same time, we have a very dense sampling, which is something that is impossible for the doctor to measure. And as I said, we have the experiment and the experiment in the real world. And we can have medium and long-term studies. We have now big data because we have the repositories, so we can have the trends and the information content behind. And also we can have a cost-effect analysis even in the early stage of development, which is quite important in order to see if the interventions or the prognostic indices are important. So this is a little bit the basis, the background behind the project. And the project is called iPrognosis from Intelligent Parkinson, Early Detection Guiding Novel Supportive Interventions. And this project started as an idea with 4 students at the Department of Electronic and Computer Engineering participating in a competition of Microsoft, the Magic Cup. So then the project was PROGNOSIS. Now it's more intelligent, let's say. It's Intelligent Prognosis. And has some objectives, and the impact is to create an ecosystem in order to capture the transition and the risk of a transition from healthy status towards Parkinson's disease. And also, in order to have this behavior in a dynamic way, not in a static way, using unobtrusive behavioral data, so the user doesn't have to do something, the system should collect the data. And also collect the data from the interaction with the smart devices. And we also can have some scenarios that can guide, let's say, the users to follow. And also we can see, based on the big data, as I said before, in the cloud repository, we can see if we can define some diagnostic tests based on this. And then we can design some interventions that are personalized and are related to the risk of the Parkinson's disease regarding to frailty, falls, and depression also. And this means that we have to create a kind of platform where we have all this information there in an open service-oriented architecture. And also we have to promote the awareness and the risk about the Parkinson's disease. As I showed in the beginning, there's a high risk and it's quite a severe disease. Actually, there is no cure and leads to death. And this means that we have to have some social intervention also, not just only to create some things individually, but also use the society. And at the same time, create a kind of feedback to the policy makers about the behavior and the change of behavior and the framework. So all the stakeholders, the relevant stakeholders can be informed and can have some new designs and guidelines. So what is the concept behind the project is that we have a user that actually we don't know if he has a Parkinson or not. And we get some G data, we call them like generalized data from devices like a smartwatch and a smartphone. And then all this data goes to the cloud, from where we can use machine learning and then try to see some changes in the behavioral vector that can inform the doctor. And the doctor can give some guidelines in order to go to more specific data, meaning that with the smart devices can be fused with the data coming from the Internet of Things inside the home. So then we have the ACE data, as we say. Then we analyze again in the cloud with machine learning all the fusion of this data, and then we show to the doctor the information, and then he advises the patients that are prognosed by the iPrognosis and confirmed by the physicians to follow specific interventions. And as you see, as I showed before, the 20 years are included here, the minus 20 years. So we try to find a way this minus 20 years to define in 2 years. So this means that we can have all these interventions and we can see how the disease is elaborated or not, or is delayed. And then this means that we can combine all this stuff that Evdokimos showed before regarding how we can implement in the living lab, actually in their house. And the unobtrusiveness, as I said before, goes to the smart devices like a smartphone, where we can tackle the tremor, the hypophonia during the natural speaking on the phone, depression and social exclusion. We can see the walkability, if you have monotony in your walking. There is also analysis of the text of the messages regarding the depression content. And also we have all these smartwatches that now prevail in the market, where we can get continuously counting of the heart rate variability, we can have the motion, we can have the sleep quality, and the Internet of Things devices that are inside the house, as we think about a belt, in order to capture the bowel sounds, because constipation is a very, very early symptom from Parkinson's disease. And even in the nutrition habits through a matometer, where we can measure the behavior during eating, because also the change in the diet relates to constipation and also to depression. So this is the G data, as I said, and the S data involves also the Internet of Things. Now, as far as the intervention is related, we have to monitoring, and we can see the monitoring also with in front of the suite of the personalized gaming. And also we can have this suite in order to have the exercise game, diet game, affective game. Handwriting also is defected by the Parkinson's disease. The voice also changes. So we want to create games that are personalized and using all this guidance in order to have the intervention as much as possible positively affecting the patients. Also during the sleep, we have some intervention I will show a bit later, and also we have some assistive intervention about voice enhancement and gait rhythm guidance. I also saw some examples. So actually, the living lab are inside the ecosystem that iPrognosis community and supported by iPrognosis platform. So based on the cloud computing, we can have all this machine learning based on deep learning neural networks. And then we can give also a kind of behavioral modeling, as I said, where we can monitor the behavioral modeling in a way that can give us this predictive indices. So regarding the examples of intervention, we already tested with the students the first preliminary data, and then we see that sleep also is effective, as I said, of these patients, and also they change the everyday life activities. So the idea was to have a nocturnal intervention, and during sleep it's very difficult to have some intervention. So the concept is to use Microsoft Band, as we say here, a smartwatch that uses accelerometer data, heart rate, and skin temperature, and try to activate, let's say, an intervention based on sounds. So we can send sounds to the patient that he sleeps with wireless headphones, and the sound level does not wake him up. So the idea is to use binaural beats, where when we present to one ear a frequency, let's say 400 Hertz, and the other ear for a frequency of 410 Hertz, but with a periodicity, then actually we induce to the brain the difference, so of 10 Hertz. So this means that we can try to change the main frequency of the brain during sleep, because the problem they have is the active dreaming. So actually they live their dream. Usually when we see a dream, the EMG is almost zero, meaning that we don't have any, we are totally relaxed. But in that case, these patients, they live actually with the muscles, and they move and they fall down. So if we can try to induce to the brain this low frequency, then perhaps it's best for them in order to be not so alert, in order to be more relaxed, to go to the deep sleep. Another example of intervention is about the gait freezing, where we have the problem where this patient suddenly, as they walk, they stop and they cannot continue. So the idea was to use some external stimuli, using the band and also the sound of the phone, in order to give them a pace in the walking. So this guide them during walking, and this is very helpful for them, as you can see here in this example. So without the involvement of the band, we have the problem. I don't know why you don't listen to sound, but Εδώ και είναι κλειστός ο ήχος. Είναι κλειστός ο ήχος. Από πάνω. Okay. Βλέπετε το πρόβλημα ότι σταματάει. Και εξωτερική διέγερση από τον ήχο και από τη δόνηση. Οπότε συνεχίζει ακριβώς ακολουθώντας τα βήματα. Αυτό είναι μία πρώτη ένδειξη ότι ένα τέτοιο είδους intervention μπορεί να τους βοηθήσει πραγματικά στην πραγματική του ζωή. Και σαφώς αυτό θα εξελιχθεί περισσότερο με μοντέλα βαδίσματος, με τρόπους με τους οποίους βαδίζει ο καθένας, τις περιοχές στις οποίες βαδίζει. Όλα αυτά μπαίνουν σε ένα κομμάτι πιο κοινωνικό, όπως είπα, και η έννοια του καθενός, ο οποίος έχει αυτές τις συσκευές και στην ουσία στέλνει δεδομένα, αποτελεί ένα ζωντανό εργαστήριο, το οποίο ενώνεται με τα υπόλοιπα εργαστήρια και δημιουργούν ένα κοινωνικό κομμάτι, όπου το iPrognosis έρχεται να βοηθήσει και να υποστηρίξει και να δώσει πληροφορία, όπως είπα, στους policymakers, έτσι ώστε, επιστρέφοντας πίσω στην κοινωνία, συμμετέχοντας όσο περισσότεροι σε αυτή την κοινότητα, να μειώσουμε τον αριθμό των ασθενών που βρίσκονται στο νοσοκομείο και να αυξήσουμε ώστε να το περισσότερο την διαχείριση της υγείας στον χώρο του καθενός. Αυτό σημαίνει ότι θα πρέπει να πάρουμε υπόψη μας και κάποιες κοινωνικές δράσεις, τις οποίες θέλουμε να εφαρμόσουμε, ειδικότερα αυτό το να δημιουργήσουμε μια κοινότητα. So this is the main idea in order to use the iPrognosis community. So this community actually involves also you, because we want to have, as I said, the young of today will be the elderly of tomorrow. So we need data in order to feed all the big data databases. And also we have an idea of the young older adults. So this means that you can be a mediator in order to help people, as the example with the students, starting this idea, connecting with the elderly was quite important. So it could be promoters in order to adopt the elderly, to help them to connect with the society and with the iPrognosis community. And this means that we can lead also to the behavioral socioeconomic models, so we feed also the policymakers. So the concept, if we see it by numbers, we are now in the project 11 partners. Last 4 years, we just started. The funding is about 4 million, and we have a lot of deliverables and a lot of tasks, as you can see. And the target is that we want to have like 5,000 people at least in this community, and then we have 80 people in the more targeted measurements with the GS data, and then we have the interventions to finally 60. And also we have all this social penetration. Of course, there are some specific risks, and that's why the role of and the concept of the Limbic Lab is quite important in order to promote the recruiting of a sufficient number of the people that are in high risk, and for example, the relatives of the patients of the Parkinson disease. And also, we have all these applications that should fill the expectation of the users, and also we have all this platform that should be working in a good way. And of course, now the minor problems is the hosting capacity of the data, and also the errors that could be in the project. But the whole idea behind is to contribute in the more generalized perspective that the European Union has adopted, which is about to address the challenges in aging in Europe. So they want to improve the quality of life, the health status, and the sustainability of healthcare systems, and at the same time to promote the growth. That's why the cost and effect analysis and the economic part of the project is quite important. And since I believe here, at least we are in the older adults case and you are in the younger adults case, I will show you a video regarding why it's important to tackle these problems and deal with research in the aging, because it creates a longevity dividend, I believe.
What was the major medical breakthrough in modern history? Was it anesthesia, antibiotics, or vaccination? Was it the wonders of medical imaging, from x-rays and ultrasounds to CAT scans? Or pacemakers, coronary angioplasty, heart transplants, or genetic engineering? Could it have been drugs like Prozac, statins, or even Viagra? No, it was the discovery and dissemination of basic public health, such as sanitation, hand washing, refrigeration, and indoor living and working environments. Before the 1850s, we didn't understand its importance in warding off communicable diseases, and people died as a result, often in thousands, and almost always at very young ages. Public health fundamentally changed what it means to be human. Along with modern medical breakthroughs, it was simple things like clean water and sanitation that helped humans dramatically change the conditions under which we live, enabling us to experience much longer lives and, for the first time with great regularity, the biological aging of our bodies. We succeeded in adding 30 years on average to the lives of individuals in many parts of the world over the last century. A dramatic achievement, to be sure, but the real question is, where does this leave us now? Is there a price we have to pay for the privilege of living longer? The answer is a definitive yes. While communicable diseases once killed us at a young age, today many more people live long enough for the privilege of experiencing chronic degenerative diseases associated with old age. Fragile bones, muscle atrophy, cancer, heart disease, sensory impairments, all signs that the human body was not designed for long-term use. In fact, we may have already reached, or in a way actually exceeded, the biological limitations of our bodies. When people reach older ages with both mind and body intact, it's a wondrous thing to behold. But where one or the other doesn't make it, the result can be devastating, a prolongation of old age, the very thing many of us fear most. Under these conditions, longer lives can be emotionally and financially challenging for the dying as well as family and friends. But aging and old age need not be thought of only as a time of loss and decline. For increasingly larger segments of society, healthy and productive aging is normal, representing a unique opportunity that few people throughout history had an opportunity to experience. A healthy older life can and should be nurtured. Today, a new medical breakthrough stands before us that may be as important as public health a century ago. I believe science is on the verge of discovering a longevity dividend, the health and economic benefits that would accrue to individuals and societies resulting from a successful effort to slow biological aging. Science is not there yet, but if we find a way to extend the period of youthful vigor, even by just a few years, the trade-off of chronic diseases for 30 years of life that public health brought us in the last century will yield a new and more positive way of thinking about aging and the extended lives many of us enjoy.
So I think that this is quite a new perspective of what is older adults, what is elderly, what is senior. This is already understood by the economy. That's why it's the silver economy, and a lot of applications are arriving in this field. The most important thing is the timing, so we have to be careful when we choose the time, and I think the time is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Leontios. Any questions? Yes, Anna.
Thank you for the presentation and very nice video to end up. I have a question about the data and about the issues that you have within the project and that you envisage for a potential post-project activity in data collection, and what is the use of that data, and what are the challenges that you have of ethical and all those kind of...
Yes, there are some already the initiatives, like not initiatives, let's say commercial things, all the apps that you download. So when you download, usually you're being asked about have access to your photos, to your GPS, your things, and many people say yes and continue. But this now is totally different data. Actually refers to, let's say, behavioral data. So we are very sensitive about these things, about the encryption and about the security and about the consensus. So we follow all this, the things that are behind these issues, and of course we follow with details, and this is something that someone wants to be a member of the community. That's why we want to have a kind of donation of your data, and the concept of donate your voice or donate your data goes to the fact that without asking you to do something, but just using your phone, it's something that you do it in any case. And we don't care about what you are saying in your, when you talk on the phone. We are saying about how you're saying. And when I said about the emotional content of the text, we don't send actually the text, but we send an index that relates to the similarity of a database of words that relates with the depression. So actually there is no information that is released in this site, but is the behavior behind. And if you go to this perspective, also we're trying to do, let's say, classification of the features without even sending this information, just only sending the features in the database in the cloud, and the features that are useful in order to increase the accuracy of the prediction and the prognostic indices performance. So all these ideas behind are taken care, because it's something that we want to have it as a contribution, as a donation, as a volunteer there. And of course, it's something that we have all this social initiative, and we want to combine the young with the elderly at the same time in order to reduce all this distance, because the technology is very well familiarized by the young people, but not the older ones, so they can be mediators to this. And smart watches and smartphone prevail the market, and will do it in the next 5 years. So I think there's a huge formation of data that in that case, we try to do a kind of new way of reducing this minus 20 years to just 2 or 3, which is quite important, very vital for the life of these people if you get the early interventions, very early interventions, in order to increase this quality of life.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
If I may also ask a question about data. First of all, I find very interesting the whole presentation and the idea of this platform that collects and analyzes data and then hopefully informs the physicians. Do you have plans to get back to the actual individuals? Like, do you have, so can they get information about their own state or?
Yes, so this is something that in our application we will give it now. Actually, we're in the time where we have the user specifications, and we go out to the focus groups, we go out to the users, we go out with the questionnaires, with web questionnaires. So we want to define all this in order to go to the development phase. But what we already thought is that this is something that the user will choose. When he downloads the application, which actually will go to the background, and you don't do anything. It's totally different perspective than the other applications in the area that ask for you to tap the mobile phone or make some games or things. Now you just use your phone, because we try to see when you type a message, a text message, how your behavior changes. When you have a screen locker, how you unlock the phone. So the idea of getting back the feedback is something that will be in the choice of the user if he wants to be informed. If we go to the specific data that refers to 80 people, as I said, there will be definitely specific feedback, because then we have the monitoring by the doctors, and then we have in the interventions the 60 people, they go to the hospital every 3 months, they check, so there is a feedback by the system and by the doctors to see about this. As we see it in the 4 years perspective as a final product, let's say, then we can have increased reliability. We believe we have after 5 years and 4 years. So perhaps, but still then the user wants also to be informed or not. The content it's up to him, not to enforce him this thing. Perhaps it will stress him, but the idea that you just download and donate your data in this content. And all this dense sampling that is impossible for the doctor to understand these micro changes in your behavior is something that is where we want to focus on.
Yeah, another question.
And another question, but also about the data. As you are collecting so much data, or the idea is to collect so much data, are there any plans that that data is used also for other diseases or other type of studies, or is just focused in this particular case or Parkinson disease?
We participate in the open data initiative of Europe. So this means that we have an open data plan. This means that all the data we collect with the metadata then will be open to all researchers, because this is an Horizon project, so this is imperative in the Horizon guidelines. So we already participated there, and we have an open data management plan, and this data could be available also to the other researchers. But actually the idea behind is imagine that we try to tackle this behavior change, but there are also a chance to create very, let's say, effective models that can be used also in other cases, but you can go also to the pharmaceutical companies. So instead of having trials in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, we can have the living labs, and based on these training models, we can test all the behavioral effects of a new drug. So this means that you can collaborate with big companies that try to develop new medicine. So we can have also a lot of application in this area. So of course it can be transferred to other diseases, but we focus on the Parkinson disease. We say constipation, for example. Constipation will also related to other, let's say, diseases, but we focus on specific, very early symptoms. That's impossible. If you just have constipation, you don't go to the doctor to have a test about Parkinson. So it's impossible someone to combine this information. But if you have all the others, for example, putting a manometer under your plate and then just measuring how you eat, and then seeing the change in your dietary behavior, it's also another change. If you walk around or you go to the same place all the time and you just stop the exploration, it's also another case. So all these have different validity. Perhaps you can, of course, you can use another content, but as I said, there is also this perspective of B2B, let's say, business out this. So we can be useful also for the other business to create new products.
So just, thank you. So the answer is clear. So, but now following that answer, and knowing that there is no, I understood there is no link with, let's say, personal data, but it's more behavioral data. Still, once you have all this base of open data, and initially you donate that data for good purposes. So in this case, I mean, the case that you presented was very clear and very, very nice. But once that goes to an open place that can be used for good, for bad, or for whatever, what kind of conversations are happening at the moment to decide who can use that data and when that data is used for good or for bad, or what is good or bad? I guess there are some conversations going on. And why I ask this question is we have input for some of our living labs, actually working in also with behavioral type of studies in other contexts, no smart cities, but with no health, but more smart cities, and also with IoT. And apparently, there is more and more, what they are saying, there is a trend that is becoming more and more difficult to engage citizens and people in this kind of experiments, because they are feeling more like being used just as data donators and not as real participants in any kind of, this is my need, and there is a risk that all that data is just used for commercial purposes and not for good purposes. So what kind of discussions are happening at the moment in the forums where you...
As you saw, we try to place all this opportunity, all this project as an opportunity to create social interventions. So the concept behind is that we try to see that my data can facilitate the next of me. So actually, as I read also in some latest publication, many people are willing to give their data. They don't care about this. I don't agree like this in a way, just take the data. That's why in the project we have a specific open data management plan. So this means that, and also European Union has a plan about this in all the data, because they want to be open for the research perspective. And the way you have access to the data, of course, is not just I release the data to you, but it goes to specific agreements. So I believe that there is a secured way to deal with how you release the data, who has access to the data. But our obligation from the project is to have the data open, at least to the European Union. So at the same time, in 2017, they will have a new law about the cloud-based data, because so far all these security things they have does not include cloud-based archiving. And they reformed all this after discussion in 2015, and then will apply this in 2017. So I believe, at least in the context of European Union, we are a little bit secured about this. I know that in the United States, perhaps it's a little bit different, but here we're obliged to follow specific guidelines, the way we release the data, which data will be released, how metadata will be released or not. All these are inside this plan of the open access data plan. And as a researcher at university, we have a lot of problems, and this is something that goes very far back to many years ago. When we started exploring things, we tried to find data. For example, data from people with Parkinson about gait, about the posture, about other disease, like with COPD or with lung sounds, even simple things like heart sounds, lung sounds. So all these data were not available this time. So I think it's a good opportunity also. That's why I saw the last video for the young people to have access to the data, they have information with the new tools that appear now in the research. I think it's a very good opportunity, and I think will open the access. Of course, I'm seeing this problem, this situation from the good perspective. And all the time there is someone who wants to exploit this. But for example, I said the connection with pharmaceutical companies in order to have better drugs, not to have to get money about this. I mean, in order to have better drugs, because you test all the behavioral changes to people that you didn't have access before, and then suddenly the drug is safer. So many people can use it without all the side effects that you can see after a while, 10 years using the medicine. So I think this is a very sensitive thing, but we are coming from the academia, and we try to do it in a good way, I think.
It's a challenge. Okay, so thank you very much. Is there any other question you want to do to any speaker? No, if not, I'd like to thank again all speakers. And, thank you for attending the workshop. I hope it was useful for everybody.